Are you ready?
Yeah.
It is the 26th. I don't have my
That
glasses.
sounds right.
Sorry. And this is the Senate Transportation Committee, and I'm Rich Westman, Senator from Ohio, and the chair of the committee, and we are here to hear from Logan and the Joint Fiscal Office.
Yeah, so for the record, Logan Bibray with the Joint Fiscal Office. Today we are going to talk about some of the fiscal impacts currently associated with the DMV bill or the latest draft of it. This document is in reference to draft 2.2, which I believe is the last version that the committee saw. So you might be seeing an updated version later, but as of right now, this fiscal estimate is for the 2.2 draft, and you should have this document behind me. It should be online or printed out.
Logan online.
Yes, that's me. So once the bill is complete, this is just a preliminary estimate right now. Once the bill is complete or nearing completion, I will turn this into a official fiscal note with all the funds trappings and whatnot. But just jumping into this, so there are 7 sections currently in draft 2.2 that have some sort of fiscal impact associated with them. And then in total, it's estimated that around $775,000 would be reduced from P fund revenues from these impacts. Most of this reduction is from 2 sections, but we'll go through them all and sort of talk about them. So the first one is in section 5 of the bill. This section is dealing with replacement registration certificates. So currently, under this 23 VSA 307B, there's a $20 fee if you need to get a replacement registration. So whether it's lost, mutilated, or damaged, you'd have to provide the commissioner with $20, and in return, you could then get a replacement registration. This section wants to sort of waive that fee if a user generates it using their online by DMV electronic account. So instead of going in, they could just print one off for free. So in 2024, there were 17,519 replacement registrations. And I want to make note, which I put in the little footnote at the bottom there, that this number includes replacement and corrected requests, and DMV is unable to sort of determine which portion of this number is replacement and therefore might be exempt and which portion is corrected, which is still would have to pay a $20 correction fee. So in light of that, this analysis kind of just assumes the worst and assumes that everyone is going to take advantage of the fee, but in reality, that's probably not the case, but we just don't really know what that number would be. So knowing that, this sort of section would reduce revenue collection by about $350,000 annually. That's from those people that would be getting replacements. Also want to note that as it stands, or as it is in this section, if you can do a replacement for free online, but if you were to go in, it would still technically be the $20 fee. So I'm sure some people would still go in to get that, but again, I don't know how much and can't really model individual utilization patterns or like that. So this sort of just assumes a worst case scenario, and that everyone who gets one does it online and no longer pays a fee.
And the total cost is $350,000.
Yeah, roughly $350,000 annually.
Mr. Chair, do you want questions at the end or?
I'm easy with this,
Okay.
you know.
Well, and this is one of the biggest impacts. Did we think about having a $10 fee instead of no fee at all? Because I guess first is
that I think is the question
for
that DMV, I
Okay.
wanted them here to be right after that.
Okay,
It's their proposal, he's pricing it out, so
Got it.
if we could hold that till then, that would be good.
got it. Thank you.
But
Okay.
I totally appreciate the question, so.
Moving on, section 6. This section is around the EV infrastructure fee that was implemented last year. Proposes to exempt state or vehicles owned by the state or any municipality in the state from that fee that was levied last year. This would also exempt the volunteer fire departments, volunteer firefighting organizations doing rescue operations, so that's the ambulances, the fire trucks, and all of that from this fee that they pay. So in 26, this would be roughly $29,000. This would.
How did you arrive?
I asked-
Over 300 EV vehicles.
I asked DMV how many state or municipality or volunteer electric vehicles they had on registered in their system, and they gave me 300 and some. And this number,
They has. Like, just seemed like they're at over 300 would be a lot, but
yeah, so I'm not sure where these vehicles are located or in what capacity. That's just the number I ever received. And this rate, this will likely grow as the adoption rate increases. So if states,
And 300 came from DMVs,
I don't know the exact number, but it was 300 something. Yes.
but that number. came
Yes, from the department,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
would be a question that we want to ask DMVs. Okay. Did you want to?
Yeah, I just want, you answered it, which
Okay.
is over the growth. I was wondering what the projection over time was as we expected.
Yeah, so I don't know the model or the rate of adoption for the states or municipalities yet, but it'll likely grow as they continue to adopt and electrify their fleets. So. Okay, section 7. This is a smaller section. This is the one that wants to expand our existing registration fee exemptions for veterans who get a vehicle that was acquired with financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs. So this would exempt them from the annual emissions fee and the EV fee as well. To qualify, an individual's registration has to come with that approved VA form. So it's a very specific vehicle that would qualify for this. And the numbers out there are very small. So this section would be a de minimis impact on state revenues. Section 8, this is the other on the back. This is the other larger section. This section provides or proposes to provide individuals receiving supplemental security income, Social Security disability, or individual with disabilities as defined on the non-EBSA with a discounted fee for their operator's license or privilege card, like your driver's license. Currently, people pay $39 for 2 years or for a 2-year card, or $62 for a 4-year card. And then there's a replacement fee for both cards at $24. This section will reduce fees for people with SSI or SSDI to $10 for the initial issuing fee, and then $10 every 4 years for renewal. And then the replacement fee will be reduced to $5. So roughly 5.4% of Vermont currently receives SSIs or SSDI. So to keep everything else sort of the same, this would result in about $395,000 reduction to transportation fund revenues. And this is assuming that all people who can't use this exemption do. Also, like the other one, it doesn't sort of take into account individual utilization trends that might occur due to this proposal. It's just sort of assuming people who now get driver's license continue to get driver's license just at a reduced rate. Section 9, this is a replacement of your motorcycle learner's permit, which would allow people to using their MyDMV electronic account to generate a replacement learner's permit for the operation of a motorcycle at no charge. This is similar to the first section we discussed, only it's for replacement learner's permits for motorcycles. So the number is is far less. It would waive the $24 fee, but there's just not that many people who do that every year. So this would be another de minimis impact to state revenue. And then section 12. So currently, the commissioner has the ability to waive examination requirements when obtaining a driver's license or an operator's or junior operator's license if the person applying has a chauffeur's or an operator's license in force at the time of application or within 3 years of applying in some other jurisdiction where they have an examination that is similar to Vermont's examination. So they can essentially say they don't have to go through the same thing if they already have a driver's license. This section would just add junior operator's license as also an exemption that the commissioner could waive. So again, the amount of these that occur every year are very slim. So this would exempt some additional individuals from the examination fee. But again, there's not that many that occur every year. So this would be another de minimis impact to state revenues. And then lastly, section 13. So currently there is a fee, $29 fee levied under 23 VSA 634 for scheduling a road test. And currently, if the applicant appears for this road test, that $29 is used, put towards the license examination fee. But if the applicant does not appear or doesn't sort of notify DMV that they're not going to show up, that $29 is forfeited. Also, the statute currently states that the commissioner is able to waive this fee until DMV is able to collect it electronically, which is what is currently happening. The DMV is not collecting this fee, but this section would propose to eliminate this whole fee entirely and have no scheduling fee. So at the time, right, DMV is not collecting anything, so this wouldn't have a fiscal impact. But I did just want to make note of this section because they do estimate that roughly 4,000 people choose not to attend their appointments. And if DMV were to collect this fee, it would be roughly $116,000 annually. But again, they're not collecting right now, so there is technically no decrease to state revenues as it currently stands.
So the sum total of all of this is
Sum total at the very top, 775,000 roughly per year. Again, with the caveats of section 5. But yes.
perfect. Any questions related to it, knowing that the underlying information that produce these numbers are DMVs? I think
Great.
we're going to move to DMV to have Commissioner, however you want to handle this.
Morning, Andrew Collier, Commissioner DMV for the record. And Mr. Chair, how are we doing? Just go through painless.
I think that our staff and Logan laid it out pretty clearly. And I think before we move ahead on any of this, we'll wanna understand, you know, where, and I think in the first point, you're gonna get questions about the numbers like 300 EV cars in it. So I think we're trying to just understand what this all is.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm sure that I'm looking like I want to ask a question, but do you want me to? But you can go ahead.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm like.
why don't we let him go
Yeah.
as he
So,
starts through this?
Not gonna-
You're gonna be the first one as we start through this.
So let's start with section 5. As I mentioned when we first brought this out, this is trying to match kind of what with the new system and new way we do registrations. Matching practice with what's in statute. I believe that the previous $20 was developed because when you get a replacement, you also get the sticker for license plate, which was extremely expensive to print. Whereas now this is able to just print on normal printer paper, and you can print it from home from your account. So it's just matching what is happening or what can happen now on someone with a new system, kind of that efficiency aspect of it. Currently, as Logan noted, we are unable to differentiate between if someone's forced to pay the 20 currently because they're having to make a change, or if it's a replacement that they're like they flew out the window while they're driving the car and need a replacement. So we just don't have where that dividing line is on that portion.
To disagree with the numbers that Joint Fiscal has come up with.
But for that one, we do not. It would be slightly less just because if you calculate the postage, we have roughly about 25,000, not including envelopes, subtracted from that. But on that whole number, I would concur that's correct.
Yes.
Okay.
I know you've been waiting.
No, it just hits me to my core to pretend that the electronic system doesn't cost something, right? I don't want us as people working on the system or the public to think that it's free, right? I mean, there's a cost. So the cost of the system is huge.
Correct.
Millions of dollars. So why would we pretend that we don't have a cost? Or, I mean, that's probably not a fair question. Why we could reduce the fee to $10 and people would probably be pretty happy about that. Reducing it to nothing, 350,000 is a lot to get back. Our revenues are falling. You know all this.
Yep.
It just seems like bad policy to reduce this.
I think that's because it's your proposal.
Yeah.
So
Yes, it's a fair point.
and I think you're hearing an amendment coming to the bill from
I don't know.
that somebody at the table.
A heavy concern.
No, and that's
better,
and Senator, I would say that's a fair assessment. I think there is a cost to the system. I think when we were looking at this policy proposal, it was through the lens of frictionless process for the consumers, that they can just go onto the account. They need the registration, they can just print it out. And it was based against what has previously happened, which is the cost was there due to the complexity of printing registry, how it used to be printed on smaller cards with the high E printers with the little stickers. So it was viewed in that lens. But I certainly hear what you're saying, which is yes, there is a cost for operating that system.
It'd be helpful to know if you looked at the cost of the cost to the state
Yeah.
of that system.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you proposing any cuts? So seeing that you're seeing 775,000 potential.
Was gonna get there. I think he's got a section about some license plates that would reduce costs. But if we're gonna get there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna pick up that shortfall.
It's coming. Keep you on the edge of your seat.
So,
Okay, that would have been.
it's a perfect question.
I'm happy to jump right into that, or I can continue down with the list that Logan has.
However you'd like to do this, but I think you know, Logan's got a list.
Yep, well,
If we went through the list and then the first person I'm gonna look at when we get through the list is, Senator White.
sounds good, sir. The EV infrastructure fee, so we calculated 370 vehicles, state, local, municipal, fire, EMS. That's what we have currently in our system. That would do it.
Do you disagree with any of the calculations here?
We do not on that one.
And I think we have a question from the Senator from Washington.
I think I got my answer, read more here, so we'll skip that. I was back on section 5, so. But I got my question answered.
Okay.
Can I make a comment and actually just to us?
Yeah.
Because my understanding of the infrastructure fee is that it was intended to be a temporary fee until we straighten out how we wanna, charge EVs for use of the roads. So this one might not be as impactful in the future. Is that accurate?
Unless you also exempt them from the M bump or something like that.
Right, so that would be the big decision, right?
Under section 7 for the veterans exception, select my notes here. We currently have 3 in the current structure, and none of those vehicles right now, out of the 3, would even apply to the EV. So that would agree with the assessment from JFO on that section. Under section 8, currently we have less than 500 with the non-driver ID that are under the SSI, SSDI program. We don't not necessarily disagree with using, I guess, 5%. That's if that's the percentage used. We don't have we don't fully know, I guess, what the license pool might qualify or on that side of it. Again, this came about as the team works on the new FAST system with the efficiencies. They identified this trying to match with the non-driver's license, and the team proposed having this just match to mirror the same with between the 2 different non-driver which have it, and then bringing a license to match it.
I would just say in this, that this is a pretty core group of people. I'm pretty sympathetic to, you know, I think if you're an individual getting supplemental Social Security income, your income is $2,019 a month.
Maximum.
A month for eligibility. So you're talking 24,000 a year. I'm pretty sympathetic to this group.
The replacement motorcycle, again, that was
And I'd say about that above, and I hate to give up revenue in to the T fund that is when we're starving. But okay, thanks.
the replacement motorcycle learner's permit. Last year we had 22. So I would agree with JFO's assessment on section 9. Section 12, we would agree to that it'd be minimal impact. I don't say this tongue in cheek, but I think we don't have a huge influx of families moving in state, or it's a moving target at times. So to transfer over a junior operator's license.
So can I just ask, in 9, and 12. If I'm going with the concept that has been raised by the senator from Wyndham, that administratively, how difficult is it to charge for these? So for example, the motorcycle learner's permit, I understand there's only 22 of them and all of that. If the concept that she raises is these systems all cost money and none of this is for free, and even though it's 22, if we charge if we lowered the fee to 10 from the 24 that you're charging, what's the administrative difficulty, and are we costing ourselves more money by just charging the fee than if we just let it go?
Correct. So there will be a fee to adjust the programming. I don't know what that fee would be to make it have a paywall at the end of it instead of just logging in and printing it. Outside of that, I don't, since it's all computerized now on that portion. If you're going in as far as I'm talking about someone not coming into the office to print one out or have one printed. If you're doing it at home, it would just developing it so that you have a paywall at the end of the transaction before you print.
That's a one-time fee too.
Yeah, it'd be a one-time development change.
I think it's a compelling argument to say that we shouldn't have nothing for charges because you've gone to electronic. I think we want to encourage that definitely, but I think the senator raises a really good point. People have to understand that when you do these things, there are costs to these systems, and you've made it more efficient. But and if we go through and I'm looking to be some consistency, but not costing us money.
Yeah, no, exactly. And probably what we should do is have some sort of policy statewide maybe about how we allocate the cost of these systems, because we're doing, it's a yearly, it's an annual payment now. We're not buying things. So there needs to be a way to assess those costs, right? Just like a company would do it. So that probably, I think it would make sense actually to do it on a statewide basis. Just have some allocation of that, which maybe somebody's working on that.
I would think that might be another committee's prerogative for policy. Why? And we would not, but we do have this in front of us, and I think you raise a good point, and I think consistency is good.
And the other thing is, if we go straight to 0 and then we find we need to increase it, that's not going to be fun. And it makes sense to have something there, even though you're not mailing things. You're paying for the system.
Yep.
You're paying a lot for the system. I don't know if off my head, somebody there might, but it's thousands of dollars, a month, I'm sure.
Yep.
So I think there should be, except, certainly for the SSI folks, there's a good rationale for exempting them. But in many of the other categories, the people are able to pay, and they probably expect to pay something. But
and in that, I think we want to encourage people to do electronic, but 0 is a little.
Yeah. Makes sense. And the last section here, 13. Again, this is another area where we're just trying to match what is currently practiced. We're not currently charging a $29 fee. I think the viewpoint from the DMV is Vermonters are busy. Things come up. Yes, we'd like them to kind of let us know ahead of time to try to reschedule, and a lot of people do reschedule. I'm just not sure. Charging them $29 is maybe the correct avenue.
We don't charge it now.
We don't charge it now.
Okay.
But it is on the books.
It is on the books, and we didn't have a way of capturing it.
Did we
Yeah.
ever charge it?
No, because there's no way to charge or to have captured it.
I thought it was a
This was-
deposit. I had the impression that that was a deposit that was paid and they just didn't get their deposit back if they didn't show up, which actually seems, because you give them the option to call.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem that onerous to me, but,
I think you're on now, and your question about your other bigger question you had earlier would be perfect time.
About, so we are proposing with the draft, that Damien has, removing the front license plate that we would supply to Vermonters to the single rear license plate. Currently it's $4.30 per plate, to print. So by going to the, just one plate for the rear, based off last year's numbers, we printed 112,968 pairs of plates. And that would be cost savings of $485,762 just on year 24 calendar year numbers.
Go ahead.
So that would make up half of what you're proposing to see as cuts. If I'm looking at it right.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could speak to that.
Correct. So that'd be approximately half. There's a question on what if it's $10 for it, so it might be 2/4 of it, or 2/3 of it.
So
Okay.
is it 485,000 you're estimating, or what's the amount that you're estimating you would get?
So it'd be, and that's not including postage either. So it's, which is significant when you're sending 2 plates.
Oh.
Is I think the max is $1.59 that we're spending on it. So you would have a significant reduction in weight for the postage. So when I talked about on section 5 with registration, we calculate approximately $27,000 in postage, $25,000 to $27,000 in postage savings if you apply that to the full 17,000. Obviously, some people came in store, but that if you apply the rationale to license plate, we're going to see significant savings as well.
So, okay, so the 485 number, I was going off what you said. So you're not factoring in your
Correct.
postage into your original number.
Correct. That's just the cost of the plate itself.
Okay, so how much would you be saving in total?
So we're still trying to work out what the number is on the postage side. We're trying to get that calculated out.
Okay.
That
Do you-
goes through BGS.
So, okay. Do you know when you would get that, or?
Hopefully by today or tomorrow. We're still trying to work with them on getting a proper weight because they get discounted postage weight, and then
So you would expect this number to be probably 500,000 or more? Is that kind of what you're saying?
I would say just based off of paper postage on section 5, it'd be above 500,000.
Okay, and so that still leaves around 200,000 plus. So would you be cutting staff or?
No, I think there's a question on if we go down to $10, so it might not be 200,000. You'd still see a small dip of a couple 100,000, but
Yeah, which is usually like a couple, so I guess I'm like, I really appreciate you coming with a proposal. I feel like I'm feeling like it's not fully baked yet, which is unfortunate. So I'm not totally following how much money or where the money is coming from. Seems like we're kind of building the plane as we're flying on this one. So I'm wondering if you could speak to where, if you don't find the money, you would make cuts. Because that money doesn't, unless that money, I'm not understanding, is just existing and doesn't have any purpose. I guess I'm confused about that. So are you
So this,
balancing the scale even with your proposal? Or what would you recommend that we do to balance? the proposal?
I would put it this way.
Yeah,
When they come up with revenue estimates for the TIFA, they use current law estimates. They don't use proposals. This would be a proposal that would go into the revenue estimate and would reduce the revenue estimates to the overall T fund. It would reduce them by the 700,000. It would not take into account the 500. So, but it's not balanced. So I think it's a fair question to say that it would ding. Granted, in all of that, it's not a huge piece, but it certainly is a ding to the overall T fund in that place. So I think the question from the senator from Windsor is, unless we adjust some of these to fall within the full proposal to make this revenue neutral, which I think you're hearing some suggestions on how to do that from the table. That's a question.
absolutely. I think at this time, we don't have for that remaining gap, any plan of attack on adjusting for that delta, the numbers.
okay. Personally, I wouldn't vote for a bill that isn't revenue neutral at this point. So I guess that's a tough stance for me to take, but it feels like we're in a not very good situation with our revenues. So, and since we're hoping to pass this bill, I assume to get it over to crossover, but I don't know the date on that. We would have to identify those places ourselves for me to feel comfortable with voting for this bill. So do you have a direction you would point us to?
I think if the hang up on that, it would be the section 5 would be the least,
This is the replacement, the very first one.
right.
Okay.
And I think if we're going to look at an area,
That would be-
I would agree with the committee that the SSI, SSDI.
Yeah, that's that's a safer cap, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really helpful, because then I'm happy, Mr. Chair, would it be appropriate for me to connect with legislative council, or how would you like to move a proposal like that?
I think what we're gonna do is, as soon as he leaves the chair, I think we'll have a discussion around the table. I think both of you are moving in a direction that I think, if we took each of these fees, if when you can comment on it, I would say, motor vehicle learner's permit, I'm fine with reducing that to 10. If we did, or cut it in half, and we cut the, in section 5, we cut that fee in half. All of these places where we reduce the fee and there is that IT system to support, and we instructed Logan and Amy to come back with something that either cuts them in half or I'm open to any specific number that you wanted to present. And we'll just have Logan run the numbers again, because the goal in here would be to either be revenue neutral or in the positive a little wouldn't hurt either.
So how would you just like project management wise want us to move forward with that?
If whenever these two can put a proposal up, would you be opposed to the concept that we're moving towards?
No chair.
I'm not gonna do any homework. I'm gonna leave it to you.
I'm gonna leave it. I'm
You're gonna-
instructing
Oh, okay.
them to come back to us with something that has numbers that are baked and we're gonna get from Logan a revised sheet that says this is where we are. And I would just ask that you include the front license plate on your new sheet.
Do we have language for you on that?
Yes,
Oh,
It's in the
It-
draft,
it's
you'll
in-
see.
oh,
this
we
morning.
are, okay.
Yeah. If we get there, we'll discuss that this morning. Yeah.
Can I ask, since we have DMV here now, this is a little out of order because we haven't heard from Damien yet, and I don't know if you're gonna stay in the room. Are you going to stay in the room? for
Yeah,
Damien's section?
we'll be here.
Okay, I have a specific section that is not in the DMV miscellaneous bill that I emailed the whole committee about. I emailed you, I emailed the DMV commissioner around extending, I don't know if you saw the email.
I have a ton of emails about
Okay.
changes in this stuff.
And I don't know if others did, but this is a very important issue to me, which is that trans Vermonters, folks who, or non-binary Vermonters who have licenses or real ID, they are very concerned with the Trump administration and the executive order that defines that there are only women and men. Therefore, the existence of their identification is inaccurate from the federal executive order. They are very concerned about having to renew their licenses, renew their ID during the Trump administration. And there has been a request from that community for us to review how we can extend that renewal period. What I heard from the commissioner was they have concerns. I'd like us to review that language as a committee because I feel and that would help me move closer to a yes on this bill. So I'm wondering what the process would be for that.
My process was to get through the dollars this morning to get to that. We have a number of requests for language. Yours, we have a TV language, and you will have a draft that kind of highlights most of all those concerns that we've heard.
I've got, I have most of what's here already. I know there's at least one section outstanding from the DMV that didn't make it into this draft.
Yep.
And then there are obviously other requests that the committee's hearing.
And we'll go through each one of those individually, and then the whole committee will make a decision. So.
Congratulations. on your appointment,
Andy,
you're official.
Senator from Washington has a question.
I'm confused on section 13, the $29 fee, so. The way that this, or Logan's dropped it, the bill, but it says that. If the applicant appears for the scheduled road test, the fee is applied. So it's, so they get charged the fee when they show up for the road test, but there's something on the book that says if they schedule it and don't show up, they still get charged. So that's the difference, am I correct? So I would like Senator Harrison, then the way this is worded makes it look like you pay the fee and then that fee is kind of applied towards that $29 is applied.
Right.
But
And
that's not how DMV does it. DMV does it like you show up for the test, do the test, you get charged the fee. There's no escape.
Correct, sorry, I have to default to.
Okay. So you're just wanting to align statute with the long-term practice of just charging the fee for the test. That's what you want to do, and not charge the fee for the scheduling of the test.
Correct.
Okay. And on the front license plate, so you're going to reduce the cost, but you're not going to change the fee. Like none of that cost savings will flow to the Vermonter paying for the license plate.
Yeah.
Correct, so we're reducing the cost of printing it. But yeah, we're not changing what we're having for the registration fee. That's correct.
We talked about the front license plate before. The prior chair was in support of getting rid of the license plate. I would want to take a lot of testimony on it. I'm not in support of getting rid of the front plate. I think it's a safety issue and would want to hear from different constituents.
That's exactly what we're gonna do. after we go through the bill with Damien and, we're gonna, the changes to the draft that we've got, we're gonna put together a list of who else we think we need. It's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. Get through this bill, now. It gives us Thursday and Friday and then 1 week when we get back to do that. And I know it's always been controversial. In the old days when I was here before you were on transportation, the state police always opposed getting rid of the food plate.
Right.
So,
I like to carry down if they've changed their mind. Yeah.
So, and you probably had some history with this.
Absolutely.
So, when we get through, we're gonna put Damien up there. I think we're gonna do a full list of all of the other add-ons that people want to this. And then, we're gonna ask, we'll look for comments from, all right, I think now it's Damien's turn.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Chair, we had, it looks like the agenda changed. I think folks think that we were going to be discussing something related to noise pollution prevention.
We, because we lost everything yesterday, I think the whole agenda changed this morning. So, and I'm sorry about that, but we lost the whole day.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to make sure if anyone was in the room and were thinking, where's the Vermont League of
No.
Cities and Towns?
Thursday at 9.
Tomorrow is, yeah. Thank you. I just wanted to say it out loud.
Yeah, and we're sorry, and Megan will post, if we have some inadvertent change again, you should check the agenda in the morning, because Megan will have changed it, but we did lose the whole day yesterday.
They could never actually come, so that item was off there. Earlier,
Sorry, we'll see you tomorrow.
thank you.
Right. Sorry about that. You wanna?
Yes.
It's like all shucks. Yeah, I know.
All right.
Yeah, how dare you talk so much about the BAA yesterday? You really.
I didn't say anything.
I know, it was
We did.
being a brat.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning.
For the record, I'm Damien Leonard from Legislative Council. So you should all be looking at draft 3.1.
I'm not seeing this. It's not clear on the website.
Oh. Should be up
Assumed it was under your
25-0613.
Are you gonna share that?
I can,
Yeah, I don't see that.
Oh, I heard it. Now it's here.
I can pull it up on the screen if you'd like.
It's fast. I'm sorry. Are you?
No, I'm not in the Zoom yet.
You don't have to
Is it
share it
3.1
now. I have
or
to.
3.3? I think I named it wrong.
Oh, yeah, it is 3.1.
Okay.
3.1.
Okay, so I don't need to share it?
I don't
It's on there.
Okay.
And you have copies from yesterday.
Okay. Perfect.
Is that the old part?
You have a
3.1.
copy from yesterday.
3.1, it's a copy.
From yesterday. Yeah, that one.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, so who's on first?
I'm ready.
Will get me.
I'm
Just seeing if we had any Abbott and Costello fans. All right. So the changes here start on page 8. So this is, if you'll remember, we had in an earlier draft, we were amending actually subsection C. And as Logan and I were going through this, Logan raised the question of, wait, isn't B the subsection that is about replacement of damaged or missing certificate, and C is the subsection about correcting a registration certificate? And I said, Logan, you're right. I drafted this wrong. So I went ahead and corrected that. So that's what you're seeing there.
So he's doing double duty as the fiscal and the draftsman at the same time?
Yeah, honestly, I'm
Double
obsolete.
duty.
I'm obsolete. You guys have a super staffer there, so, but yes. So Logan caught, my mistake there, and so this is just correcting that. So the next change, gets us down to section 6. Just one page further on, you'll see that we've added ambulance service and a reference to emergency medical, services.
So if we can just back up to 5, so what we're changing is the reference to either. Is the fee being changed here at all?
No, so that this is still at no charge as was proposed by the DMV, and then Logan and I would work on
You
that and
guys are
come up
gonna
with a
work
proposal.
on, I think the concept was we're gonna cut everything in half, what, was suggested in each of these sections.
So that would bring us to,
So we'll come back to this as, in the dollar amount.
yeah.
Okay,
All right. And I'm taking notes in my draft here
okay,
as we go through.
Yep.
So right, in section 6, we've just added the references to ambulance service and emergency medical purposes, or any combination of those activities. Just to be clear that you may have vehicles that are owned by a volunteer fire department that are used for firefighting and emergency medical and rescue purposes.
It just
Um,
expands it to the nonprofits.
Yes, so the ambulance service would cover both a volunteer ambulance service, a nonprofit ambulance service. It's just a general term that we use for our rural ambulance services.
does anybody object to this change in committee?
No, I think it's actually good because just with the healthcare changing, we may have other types of ownerships, but I think it's good.
And so I'm gonna call this in.
Okay,
And okay, so when we come back to the next draft, that's in.
okay. Next changes are way down. Let me find them for you.
He needs to own.
Yeah,
What do you want?
I think you're right. So I do want to flag that there were questions outstanding about finding out the value of, for example, classic cars and so forth, which we haven't addressed yet, and they aren't addressed in this draft because I don't have a sense of what the language should be at this point.
Okay,
And I think we were looking for more information on that. But I just wanted to flag that I haven't forgotten about that. It's just not in the draft because I didn't have language.
all right, so we got the issue of classic cars that's on our list. Go ahead.
I guess I don't understand what the issue is.
So if you have a classic car that doesn't have a clean trade-in value,
Yes.
currently, the statute calls for clean trade-in value. So the question is there guidance on how the commissioner should determine the value of a classic car for purposes of calculating the purchase and use tax?
How frequently are there classic vehicles that is a clean trade-in value? There's no damage for the most part. So how many classic cars are so extremely damaged that they don't have a clean trade-in? Like, what is the number of cars here? It seems like
So
it's probably
for
pretty small.
used cars in general, we take the clean trade-in value. And so the way, if you look at the current statutory language there, let me pull it up for you. and we've got a proposed revision in here.
If I buy that's GTO, I would have to figure out what the value is regardless of
Yeah,
its condition.
Yes, so I guess I'm confused with what the issue is.
How do we figure out what the value of it is? Because it's, if it's so old, I guess not, maybe not the GTO, but if I buy Senator Kitchell's Model A, what's the value of that?
You're talking like there's no information at all. Like there's
Blue
nothing,
Book doesn't,
there's no, oh,
which I assume is what the issue.
yeah, I think that's the question. I
Well,
think you had raised the question.
yeah, I had a constituent question, so, which is a little different than that. So I was just trying to see if everybody received the answer from DMV, which I know DMV answered, but I haven't looked at it yet. And it was earlier.
Right,
Which is
and
another-
you did raise
If that was
for
a
your-
title
your-
issue.
So, you know, it's out there,
Okay.
you know, if we can come to some solution to that, it makes sense that people agree on, we'll include it in here.
That's wonderful.
If not, you know, maybe that's something that we'll have to put off till some other time,
Okay.
but that's the, that issue we're gonna come back to.
okay, can I just
Yeah.
understand what the issue is? Cause so here's where I'm at, so I can explain my understanding, because I'm always trying to move toward the yes.
So,
There's a title issue that
Yes,
says here,
yes.
that's
Right.
different than what we're referring to here.
Right,
Okay.
right. And there's a pretty long email about it.
Yeah,
So
that I
I'd
thought
rather
is
you look
what
at
you.
that.
Okay,
I mean, I can summarize it by just saying, what I heard from my constituent is that it used to be a lot more convenient and easy, to register a car when you don't have a clear title, because sometimes people buy cars that have just been in farms for a while.
yeah,
And so now it's not that easy, and sometimes you need to get it's like a bond for the title. And it's relatively expensive, so he's concerned about that.
oh, but.
And so I sent his information to DMV, they responded, I haven't had a chance to look at the response yet.
Okay, and that's a separate issue than what we're referring to.
Yeah.
It is.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's where I'm.
Yeah,
In going through this, I missed that my notes said classic car titles and registration. So, were the issue that I had highlighted from our last conversation, and the takeaway is it's not addressed in this draft yet, so we still need to address
That's
it.
what I'm looking for.
so it's on,
Yeah.
it's on my list is one of the things that we will come back to.
And do
Yes.
you, in that situation, are you requesting language from Damien to get this addressed, or?
I think we don't have a clear direction to get language yet.
Right, I
I mean, I
think
could-
step one is looking at what DMV sent. And then step two is figuring out if there's a direction or if things are okay as they are. And that's a policy question for the committee. I
Yep.
can't make that decision
And
for
I
you.
think Damien will come back with some recommendations back.
Well, I was just gonna, I don't wanna add to the discussion right now, but classic cars don't have titles, and that's part of the problem too.
Yeah.
But that's a discussion for not today.
Not today. That's a way, and we will have hundreds of people that will want to come in and talk.
I do have the email, it was just sent to me, I'll send it to all of you.
Thank you. That'd be
Okay.
great. Make sure that Damien has, that email.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So anyway, we are on page 41. And section 31. And this is placeholder language. Placeholder for possible language regarding registration for individuals in foster care. I know we were still having discussions with DMV. I don't know what the upshot of those discussions has been at this point. And so that there's a placeholder there just in case something's added. Section 32 gets us into definitions for the purchase and use tax.
So so the foster care right now, DCF pays.
Right now, my understanding is that, I believe DCF. Yeah, I'm gonna actually turn to the department for this because I can't remember the ins and outs.
Correct. So right now, DCF, pays for each individual child who's in foster care comes in and gets a permit or a license. They use a credit card. They're having trouble. So the goal is to not have that fee with them. AHS, we've been working with DCF in a policy at AHS. They are looking for, I think it's next session. They're still trying to work on their side of the house on how best to get information flowing to us to make it a seamless transaction and not have that charge. But right now, DCF pays through a credit card when they have someone that comes through.
So this may be something that you may want just to report back, not to put another report on the department, but, or you may just want to, if we don't have a solution, you may also, if you don't want to report, just
Did you
leave it
raise
out.
this one out? Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't think you did.
So, but anyway,
This is probably not. What do we have? 1,400 kids,
I'm not sure.
to me, 12, 13. And it must be a pretty significant subset that is, trying to get a license.
I thought the commissioner did tell us the other day, how many, it was like a few hundred, it was surprising.
It was
It was like 500.
yeah, it was right around 500. I believe we had.
Just but
A year.
you could include that in your cost estimates for that piece, that would be helpful. Just so if we got any questions, we know exactly what. I'm very sympathetic to kids that have been in this kind of trouble in doing it. And I always want to be helpful to the general fund and relieve pressure on the general fund where possible, if it makes sense.
Right?
We should be helpful to the general fund where we can, but we like it when they like us too.
Sure, it goes both ways.
But if you could do that, then we'll make a decision on this specific piece. It seems like a lot of paperwork from one state piece to the next.
Under the credit card.
Yeah, we don't like that 3%.
Yeah, we should be negotiating. It's not.
The institutions.
If only we knew someone on that.
You have something in the that we should charge people the 3%.
No, I just think that state should be able to negotiate with the credit card. You get a better deal, because we're not, that's a.
Fine with that.
Yeah.
I would, at the end of this, I will have a question about credit cards and people being able to use their credit cards with DMV and whether or not we charge the 3% or not.
That will be a question for them. So,
But we're gonna get through to the end of this before we
all right.
ask that question.
All right, so turning to purchase and use tax, we're amending the definitions here. The change you see on lines 19 and 20 of page 41 is really just for consistency. The language in that definition was quite dated, and so I've just brought it up to the way we write definitions now. The real substantive change is adding a definition of male on line 1 of the next page. And because I was cross-referencing back to the definition section for Title 23 there, I wanted to make both consistent so that people wouldn't read that and say, well, why did they write it differently here? Any questions on that? that's a definition you actually added last year, the male definition there, so.
The senator from Washington wasn't clear last year.
Well, so,
I'm holding you responsible.
I think the definition was very clear. But it
Oh,
wasn't
because
added.
did you write the definition?
No,
last
no,
year?
I didn't. But just in case my colleagues, one of whom is my deputy director, are listening in, the definition, I'm sure, was very clear. We're just adding a cross-reference from a different title.
Okay,
Okay.
I just wanted to,
Boy, so many potential potholes here. You'll forgive the pun. So the next section here gets into the actual collection of the tax, and we're adding language. In the first couple of sections here, I'm just clarifying, I'm getting rid of suches and thereofs and.
What section?
Oh, I'm sorry, we're in section 33, page 42.
line,
Lines, starting on line 2, moving down. So lines 4 through 13, subsections A and B. This is just updating language, so we get rid of some of the legalese. And subsection D, again, we're getting rid of legalese, and I'm clarifying what same is actually referring to. In subsection F, same thing, getting rid of legalese. And then the real changes happen on page 43, starting on line 4, subsection G. Commissioners shall establish procedures for taxpayers to file an appeal regarding liability for the tax due in compliance with the requirements of the section. The procedures shall include a process by which a taxpayer can informally resolve the dispute prior to issuance of a final administrative decision. And then subsection H requires the commissioner to create educational and outreach materials for taxpayers that provide information regarding the appeal process and opportunities to informally resolve disputes. So this comes from language that the department had requested, although I do want to be clear, this language is lengthier, so I want to make sure that the department is okay with it. We have not had a chance to touch base to discuss it, so.
if you had a chance to review it in the department.
We have, when you sent it, there haven't been any changes since you.
No, this is what I sent over, but we haven't had a chance to talk since I sent it over. So, yeah, they have seen a draft. But
Do you have
yeah.
comment on it now, or?
No, this is just clarifying that what we're seeing is just a ability to try to resolve any of these disputes without going through the hearing process for individuals. We're just trying to make it simpler.
Go ahead.
Oh, did you have something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just the use of the word informally concerns me, because to me, informally means kind of out of the process and not official. So, but it helps to know what your intent is. So maybe we could just use a different word or like some sort of process prior to the other process.
I'll look for a different word and
Okay.
update.
Do you need a word there? Can you just say taxpayer can resolve the dispute prior to the issuance? I don't know if you need
Oh,
to
yeah.
add anything. But that's what my question
Go ahead.
is. I don't understand what G is doing then. With right now, we have an established procedure for filing appeal, do we not?
So yes, my understanding is that there is a procedure for filing the appeal, and this is just codifying that.
Oh, we don't have, that's not in the session law books, but so I guess we're either codifying it or we're creating a new process, but since we have a form that people can file, that's not the administrative decision, right? That's.
Yeah, so within that chapter, there is no specific reference to appealing the tax, petitioning for review, or disputing that I've been able to find. I can certainly read through the chapter again, but in looking through it, I didn't see that, and this was requested. So the request from DMV's attorney was to add language saying the commissioner shall educate taxpayers about the available opportunities for resolving tax disputes regarding possibilities for informal resolution before final administrative decision, and shall establish procedures for handling taxpayer appeals. So I broke that out. Obviously, what I wrote is quite a bit lengthier, and I split that out. And then the note was this needs to be added somewhere in the purchase and use tax sections of Title 32.
So the only change, I mean, the commissioner could decide to change the current process if you wanted to, and then here, the only real change is age. I'm assuming there's not educational outreach materials now, but if there is, then they've also done both.
Right. So when you codify something like this, what it does is even if the department is doing it already, this basically means that it has to be a practice that's made
Going forward, yeah.
So, so there, it may or may not create extra work for the department now. They can answer that question. But this will sort of put that guarantee in there that there will be a process and that there will be some materials available to inform people about what their options are.
And maybe that, well, just going back to the lieutenant governor's testimony, maybe the educational outreach materials would be enough just to let more people know about the process. But it doesn't change the current process, or might not change the current chances.
Right. So when I'm drafting, I don't like to obliquely refer to a process.
Sure. Yeah, no, I'm not
because-
blaming the
yeah.
drafting.
No, I'm just saying I wouldn't take out the procedures language or the process language and then just put in education language because,
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
so, yeah. I mean, from a work standpoint, all they may have to do at this point is just say, here's a handout on what you do
Right.
if you want to dispute your tax bill.
Which they have now.
So,
So did we come to a resolution between, the dropping the single word or?
so
I agree with yours, and it informally makes it kind of like you could just.
What, would we just drop the word informally?
you could potentially do that. I just want to think about it a little bit more just to see whether there's.
Because I was looking to get to a point where we said this was okay and because I'm looking to move this process closer to,
I'm okay with it, but I would be open to drafting, thinking about that.
if Damien, our draft person wants to think about it, we'll hold that open and come back to it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think about whether there's benefit to describing how you resolve that.
I'm trying to push this along to get us to a clean draft.
Understood.
So,
All right. Next draft, or next section, I'm sorry, excessive speed. This is going to the points assessment for driving with excessive speed. This is instances where you're more than 30 miles an hour over the speed limit. On page 44, line 4, subdivision 9, we're adding a cross-reference to the actual prohibition on driving 30 miles an hour over the speed limit on a state highway. So that's all this is it's just adding a cross-reference to an additional statutory provision out there that prohibits this.
and if my memory is correct, this is just cleaning up statute that reflects what we've been doing.
That's again a question for the department on whether the existing practice is to seek 8 points.
So currently you can get 8 points under 10003, 10007, and it wasn't under the this section, you just had the criminal aspect through or the fine. So you weren't seeing the points assessed on this. So it's just making in line with the other two sections that you assess the 8 points. Didn't give it actual teeth. Be used.
So you're okay with this? Anybody at the table have any problem with this? I'm gonna mark this okay, so when you come back, we don't have to do this one again.
Great. And just so everyone knows, when I come back with each new draft, anything that doesn't have changes from the last time, I unhighlight. So
I'm looking for you to unhighlight that piece.
Yeah, so yeah, if there are no changes, that's sort of my automatic default. Unless I know that the committee is still
Well, I'm
discussing.
just trying to be
Yeah.
clear with,
Yeah. So sections, the next several sections on tinted windows, I think you're getting a ton of testimony on this tomorrow.
Yep.
So I just want to highlight, this is the department's proposal. So this would take the sections 14 and 15 from last year's transportation bill, motor vehicle bill, excuse me, and delete them, and then replace them with new sections that are making the changes minus the language that the department asked to have removed. The reason we have to do that is just because prospectively amending a prospective amendment of statute ends up causing problems when we try to codify. And so this just deletes what we did last year and puts something new in and prevents any problems with this getting codified.
It would be helpful to see those sections.
I can do a side by side and send that to the committee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so this is deleting 14 and 15 from last year in section 35, and then in section 36 we add new language in. So, and I will say I've also I've done research on what our neighboring states require on this. And I can walk you through that as well.
Okay.
I assume that's not something we have time for this morning, but I can send you a summary of that too.
Why don't you tell us right now so we can.
So what I'll say is on a high level basis, I looked at New England and New York, so states that are in our immediate region. Of those states, all of them refer to a percentage of visible light transmission. And only one state refers to the federal standard, Massachusetts. And Massachusetts does the federal standard, and then 2 subdivisions later, they say the percentage of visual light transmission is as follows. The states are not necessarily consistent on the percentage of visible light transmission. And they approach it different ways. Some say you can block this amount of light. Some say you have to have this amount of light transmitted. Some also address reflectance. So you can't have a highly reflective coating on the window. But in general, it's about the limits are set. They'll set a windshield limit, side window, driver's side and passenger side window, and then the rest of the car. Sometimes they'll break out the rear side windows from the rear window. Sometimes they do it together. Generally, it's around 30% visible light transmission for the darkest tinting. And then they'll require more beyond that. And in some cases, they'll say, they'll reference other specific things. But what I did see is when they reference the federal standard, which references the SAE standard, they also included a percentage. Another possibility is to say, one thing we do with building codes, and I haven't talked to the department about this, so they would need to weigh in on the feasibility, is say that the department shall set a percentage and rule based on the federal regulations and the SAE standard or its successor. We do this with so building and fire codes is the other thing I cover, or one of the other things I cover. And what we do there is we say Department of Fire Safety shall adopt the most recent version of the National Fire Protection Code within X number of years. And so, or regularly update to the most recent version. And the reality is, because they're a state agency with limited manpower, they're usually a few years behind. But every 3 to 6 years, we get an updated fire code and updated electrical and plumbing codes, et cetera, based off of those updates.
Can you just remind us, Andy, that's what the committee was thinking here last year?
Yes, the idea was to allow manufactured tinted windows to be allowed. The main idea was that we heard from law enforcement that sometimes they give tickets because it's currently illegal, as we see in this draft. And so an officer would issue a citation and then the person would say, well, I just got my car inspected yesterday. Why did I pass inspection, but then get a ticket the next day? So we were trying to align the legality of tinted windows with the inspection manual. So why would we allow illegal vehicles to be inspected, basically? And we also heard testimony. So there's a question of well, maybe it shouldn't be illegal. So we did look at other states. We had law enforcement come in that talked about approaching a vehicle that has the blackout windows, how they didn't like that. We also heard from bike and ped people that said that when you can't see the driver, that's a problem. And also we heard from police officers that talked about that study kind of accidents about blacked out windows make it more difficult to see out the side windows for a pedestrian or even a vehicle, a motorcycle, whatever. So that there was a reason to keep it illegal. We were trying to align it with inspections so that people didn't get illegal vehicles inspected and cause problems after the fact. That's basically.
Yeah, thank you.
Really good summary.
Thank you.
And so, yeah, there was a link provided last year by Bob Church to a website that summarizes tinting laws from other states. And so that's on last year's committee webpage under his name.
So this is already illegal.
Yeah.
My question is, how many tickets were cited? And do we have that information?
I'm assuming it's not many, but I don't remember if you heard a number last year. I don't know.
I have that number.
But we didn't want to catch those because the federal rules allows, and I think, it cites that rule, which cites the code. But I remember thinking it's you couldn't block more than 30%. And then we had a lot of demonstrations about what does that mean, looking at photos.
I'm not inclined to want to read what you want. And I think the premise of having this match, what goes on, I would not be very happy if I got my car inspected and I drove out into the road and then got a ticket. I'm just saying that just personally. So I totally get where the committee was coming from, but if there's nobody being ticketed for this, I'm worried about that too. So
I think I don't think it's not primary enforcement. I don't think. I mean, I'm not sure about that, but I think they were issuing a ticket when they're already pulling them over for something else. If I remember the testimony correctly. We also heard from the company that does the most window tinting in Vermont, according to them, they're the number one tinting company in Vermont. And they said they have a sign that says this is illegal, but they do it. You cannot have this. So just to identify themselves. So we just thought it was interesting that we were saying it was illegal, but we're not going to enforce it. And then also, so we really looked down do we want it to be legal or not? So felt like there was a legitimate safety reason for not allowing the full blackout window. So that was a question, well, what percentage do you go? We thought we would go with the federal rules, around 30%.
Is that, is there anybody in here that disagrees with the direction that they were headed last year?
No, that makes sense.
No,
And
I think it
yeah,
totally
yeah.
makes sense. If that's helpful for you as we work through the draft and if you can work through that draft, Damien, that
So I think
reflects that.
I think the question here is, so DMV's proposed language, which is in this draft, takes out the reference to the federal regulation because the federal regulation then refers on to an engineering standard for the industry, the SAE standard, which in order to get that, that's a $44 publication. And I believe there were concerns about that process. So I think the question is there a way to draft this so that manufacturer applied tintings, which have to comply with federal regulations, are permitted, but aftermarket tintings are not. And so your legislative intent last year was that shading or tinting material that is not allowed under statute as amended by this act poses a danger to the individual operating the motor vehicle, and that such a motor vehicle shall fail the annual safety inspection. And so then the question is, how do you put that into the inspection manual in a manner that is easily applied by inspection stations without having to purchase and read the SAE manual and easily put into the inspection manual by DMV in a way that's understandable? And so that's, I think the question here is, how do we draft that if your intent is to move forward with this in a manner that DMV can implement, and then that is easily enforced without running into the sorts of issues that, for example, running into with brake rotors, where the question is like, you know,
We've got one where if you
right.
pull it out, it's just a little greasy from last time.
Yeah, and I mean, I looked at some of the brake rotor testimony from last year. There was an Acura with 9,000 miles that's its brake rotors failed because of pitting on one side of the rotor.
Supposedly.
Right. And so there are these things here where how do you put this into the manual in a manner that's clear and easily applied by an inspection station? And one of the things to keep in mind with other states is in some cases, it is not something that's enforced at inspection. It is enforced instead. It's something that the police will enforce if they pull you over. So like New Jersey was mentioned, and that's a state police thing. They're the ones enforcing that statute, not the inspection mechanics. So there are some questions here. I can work with the department to find out if there is language they'd be comfortable with that gets to last year's legislative intent.
I'm not opposed to that.
Yeah.
What I will say is that we need some clear direction on this by the end of the week. And if we don't have something clear by the end of the week, there may be another vehicle that we can find to include this in. But I think it sounds like there needs to be some struggle, but we are going to be under time constraints, and I don't want to back this up into the 14th is tomorrow, and we are still dealing with this.
I would say what you suggested, Damon, was put in code still, but then have DMV put the percentage of what the code says and update the rules, just like you said that we do as we do kind of for energy code. And I did talk to the manufacturer's representative about, if they had some suggestions. Okay, we're going to try to reach out to the auto manufacturers on how they see this. They would rather see a code reference, because if the code changes more than 30%, but the code changed to 32,
Mhm.
So we want to stay in line with that code of changing, but if it, unfortunately, the code isn't clear, the code doesn't say 30%, I guess, so if the code is not clear, then we have to have some way of interpreting.
Yeah, so the problem is the federal regulation, which is available for free, simply references ANSI SAE Z26.1.
And that doesn't give you a percentage.
Not immediately. If you know how to dig through the Federal Register and find the rulemaking documents, you can find the percentages that were in place when they adopted that regulation, but that's not something that we would expect the average layperson to be.
Well,
able to
yeah,
do.
so that's whatever they work would need to be done on the code, would be done by DMV. I would assume with so I'll check with the manufacturer representative again and see if they have a way that they would want it to be easy to figure out. But then as
Yeah.
far as the inspection station, they don't have to go figure it out. They would just be given a percentage.
Yeah, so
There's a
they're
requirement to have a meter.
right. So they would need to have a meter to be able to test that.
Right.
And then a percentage. So if you're, yeah. There is various pieces out there that basically say that 70% of visible light has to be able to come through the windows, the front window and the two on the side. And that you can't have anything blocking it. And a lot of that is already.
How about we say 30% unless the code is different, and then somebody would have to prove to us that the code says it's not 30%.
So the problem with that is if you get to a point where the code is changed and now you have vehicles coming from the manufacturer that are out of compliance with that amount, you're now asking people to try to find that proof and then having to prove that our statute is more restrictive than federal law. And that runs into a problem now for the dealerships, trying to sell cars that are coming from the
I
manufacturer.
meant with the condition that we would change it, so the DMV would have the authority to adjust it based on the code.
Yeah.
Somebody could point it out, or they could find out that it was, somebody would point it out to us instead of, I don't know how often that code changes. It's like energy codes will change every 3 years or not.
I don't know how frequently SAE updates.
I would assume
their
the
standards.
manufacturers and the dealerships would say, hey, there's a new code. The new cars are coming out with different tints, so can you change the rule?
Yeah, and I think the guidance that I would recommend putting in is rather than setting a specific amount in codified statute, I would say that DMV shall set it.
Yeah.
And update when the code updates. And then put in guidance that during that, because there is a rulemaking period, this is an adopted rule, it'll take 6 to 8 months for DMV to update as soon as they get notice of the code change.
And they do it by order.
So I would say at that point, they could issue a circular to inspection mechanics that they're changing the amount, and in the meantime, don't fail cars
Can I just,
at this
Just-
point. But again, I don't want to speak for DMV.
no, I want you to work
No.
this out with them and talk about it.
Yeah.
And then we'll talk about what this all looks like. One question I've got is, I'm an inspection station in a small town, and I've just got and I'm doing the inspection. Do they have a machine or something that they know what 30% is, or, and these percentages?
My understanding, based on looking at some of the testimony from last year, is that there are meters that you can get that will measure this. I don't know how expensive or hard to get those meters are, or how accurate they are.
Well,
But
do
my
you know
unders-
how many inspection stations have these meters?
None of them have it now.
Yeah.
None of them would have it now, because they don't need.
Right, well, and I'm just worried, as we talk about these things.
So what,
We looked it up. I'm looking up on Amazon. If I remember correctly, last year, you could get one for $25.
No, I'm
Yeah.
45 bucks, I'm not, yeah, that would be
And
great.
they, some of them have them.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, so I just, want to make sure. Just when I walk in to get mine inspected, I'll hear about it.
Yeah,
I'm just,
And bikers who can't be drivers and make eye contact with drivers. I mean, this feels very important to me from the bike safety perspective, was the most compelling piece. Because if you've ever been in a situation where you're trying to know if you are safe to turn, you look to the driver. And if you can't see the driver, it's very hard to make an accurate prediction.
I think we want to take this up, we'd like to get to some resolution if possible, but, as from what I hear, we aren't enforcing this now. So it would be nice to get a path that some people could live with.
Yeah, current law says that you shall not operate a motor vehicle on which material or items have been painted or adhered on or over or hung in back of any transparent part of a motor vehicle windshield, vent windows, or side windows located immediately to the left and right of the
how
operator.
many of those ones?
Yes.
Little triangle ones that we got here.
Yeah.
So
And I just say, ask the commissioner, would you have access to how many tickets might have been?
Yes.
And could you come back with that number? So we at least know what's going on there.
Can I just ask one question on what you just read there? Does that prevent any aftermarket tinting at all?
technically it prohibits any aftermarket tinting where you're painting or adhering a material to the glass to tint it. I don't know if there are other methods for tinting that don't involve that. I'm not aware of any.
But I'm not
So-
sure either, but.
Yeah, I mean, the tinting that we had on our vehicles when I lived in the Southwest, that was all adhered on.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if there's any other options out there, but that would technically prohibit that without any percentages. It basically says it's got to come,
We were trying to
as
that
that.
problem too last year, because that was a problem, because it was very broad, like even if you just have an air freshener on your rear.
Well, so there is language in there that says the prohibition of this section on hanging items shall apply only when a hanging item materially obstructs the driver's view. And then the problem with materially obstructs is that's a subjective.
So does that
Yeah.
mean that,
Your fuzzy eyes.
my parking pass that I get from the city of Winooski to park in the parking garage
Yeah,
is legal?
not to drive around with.
You're supposed to take it off and put it back on every single time you get in the car. Not to tell you what to do.
I was hoping that they worked on that and fixed that. Because the
Yeah.
city of Winooski says I can't park, and the guy that runs around is quite diligent about giving tickets in the parking garage.
And that parking garage is really well maintained because they have revenue. Just-
I'm just, but yeah, but the only way I can park there is hang something on.
Yeah.
And I'm told this is what you do, but they don't hand out any message that says, if I leave it on when I drive out of here, we can ticket you for it. Just saying,
That's your liability.
so. I think if you guys can work on this for us, that would be helpful.
Happy to.
Okay,
Okay, so that's gonna skip us ahead to number plates on page 47, starting on line 16. This is so I think that we may want to depending on where you end up on this, if you do end up switching to one number plate, and I know there's debate about that, then I would suggest some further tweaks to the language here, because there are still some references to two number plates. And then, and I was going off the language that was sent to me without having had a chance to talk to the department. So, but this would basically say, that the plate shall be secured to the rear of the vehicle, and shall be kept entirely unobscured, and the letters on the number plate shall be plainly legible. So it's basically just switching over to the idea that you have one number plate on the rear of the vehicle, and that you can't obscure it or make the numbers illegible, which anyway, let's not get into that. I was just thinking I saw probably 6 or 7 vehicles on my way in today that
That you couldn't see.
were either obscured or the numbers were illegible because the plates are so old.
Well, how about we got, they're just so muddy that I can't even,
Well, there's that. I was just thinking bike racks.
I don't
But-
think every day about going out and.
Yeah.
And cleaning it off. That's not my first thing when I get in the car.
Yeah. So anyway, but the basic change there is we're shifting over to one on the rear if you move forward with that language. And I would suggest a few more tweaks if you decide to move forward in that direction to get rid of the references to two unless there's
Your
any
second.
instance.
Wendy's first, your second.
Just a.
Yeah.
Two little things. I mean, sometimes the color of the whole car is obscure when you're on the highway. So, some don't have numbers, some have just letters. Is that
So
okay? Does the number plate, does that?
No.
It says the numerals and letters on a number plate shall be plainly legible at all times. Sorry, that was a
Okay.
misspeak on my part.
Okay. So we just might want to say or letters. Because mine only has letters, no numbers.
Just refer to the
Just-
plate.
Or the plate, yeah, license
Plates
plate.
will be playing with it.
Can I be ticketed for dirty plate that they can't read?
Evidently, yeah, so be careful.
You can get a ticket for a snow covered plate, which I can attest to
You got a ticket for that?
in New York. Snow was covering my
I
face.
thought,
I mean, that's New York, but still,
Mm.
$35. Anyway. Another story.
Yeah.
I'm glad somebody's doing their job.
Yeah, me too.
Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
Little, little aside, one of the perks of working for the New York State Legislature was that they'd give us advance warning of speed traps on the interstate on holiday weekends. So
You were in the state capitol, you got this.
they would
It was a
send
perk.
out a notice. They'd say we're doing enhanced speed enforcement at these areas on the thruway this weekend. Be aware. And it was always helpful if I was going to visit family or friends over the holiday weekend. I'd know where to tuck in the right lane and
That's,
slow down.
That's,
Anyway,
I don't think.
this was
we're-
20
I
years
don't-
ago, so I
I
don't know if
don't
this
think,
still
I don't
happens,
think
but-
we're gonna do that in Vermont.
I was gonna ask if they add something to the bill that maybe.
Yeah.
Andy,
So I remember from this plate discussions in prior years, the commissioner has the ability to just issue one plate, right? We don't, if the commissioner decided tomorrow to issue one plate instead of two, the
Yep.
commissioner has such authority.
Yeah, so
So this doesn't
Yeah.
really change.
this already says shall have in place either one or two number plates as the commissioner may require.
So
So
then
the
it
commissioner has
strikes out
discretion. So if we get rid of two, what that does is it basically brings us to one, is not
Right.
just
But
the,
above it still says.
and that's one of the tweaks.
but the
So-
commissioner, if we are totally silent on this, the commissioner could do it.
That's my understanding. That's what I'm clarifying.
Right, and I think we added that when we switched over. Trying to think if this was added when the first Vermont Strong plates came out. I think that may have been when we started clarifying, like back in 2011, 2012.
Yeah, maybe, but I thought, yeah,
But it may have been before then.
I think it was before then, because my understanding is the 2 plates are still required. You can just put the Vermont Strong in front of that plate.
Mhm.
Mean that
We did add language clarifying that you could do that.
they had to, my understanding.
Oh, in front of,
You
over
can't
the
have
plate.
just the Vermont Strong plate at you, because the rule is you always have to have 2 issued plates,
Mhm.
but you're allowed to put the other one in front of it. So, but you have to show that you still have the 2 plates.
Interesting.
That's how I remember the discussion by prior.
You're right.
Prior for your years.
Or under your, in your car. The other.
Yeah, like on the dash, so you can show that you have 2 in your.
The answer to your question, I think we went, this might go back to the bicentennial plate, which goes back quite a ways.
Okay.
Yeah, because the question always was with the commissioner's authority, could it be individually granted? So the former chair would always say, can I have it for my Corvette? Because I don't want to have a bracket on it because it didn't come with a bracket. But the commissioner did not grant it individually. But there was some questions about whether the wording allowed that kind of thing.
Well, could I
Go
ask
ahead.
a question on that? Does that language say, it doesn't say that the commissioner can individually approve, it's either up or down for everybody.
It says
That was the
either,
debate. That was the debate. Mazza said that he read it, that he said.
Okay.
it is rather broadly worded language. So you could argue that it would allow individual discretion. I think that there would be some potential due process and equal protection concerns if we were handing out single plate.
Yeah.
To certain people, but not others. So, anytime there's standardless discretion to change the rules for one person, you start to run into issues. As nice as it would be not to have the bracket on the front of your Corvette.
And not to, but as
Yeah.
we come to a close to at least this part of the discussion on this. And this is not a question of, the senator from Washington's. Could you just make sure that the whole issue of the commissioner and their discretion around whether or not to do this, could you just look at the statute to make, to verify what, the senators,
Yeah, so the discretion language is in the first sentence.
okay,
And then, but I will look to see if if there are any other references to that discretion or one plate.
if you would do that,
Yeah.
just to make us completely clear about where we're headed.
And it would be good to know if the DMV's recommendation is to just always be one plate or have one plate, but still have the discretion of the commission to do the 2 if they want.
Yep.
That would be
great. And, I wanna rush, well, go ahead. And then, I'm gonna try to rush through this and be done in the next 5 minutes so we can take 5 or 10 minutes off and then we're back here. So go ahead.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to voice that, I am not in favor of the removal of the plate as we envision it right now. It seems, to the point made earlier, that this is, you are going from, the cost savings for us is because we're giving people one less plate. Which, if you are trying to reduce costs for Vermonters, it seems like you would then not charge them the full amount. You would charge them half of the amount, if that's kind of the end goal of some of the other work that you're trying to do. So at this point, I'm very hesitant and would not be in favor of that section being included, although it does help meet that cost neutral piece. So I'd like to understand that more. And then on the one thing that has frustrated me for a long time is it seems that especially there's a high volume of folks in law enforcement, unfortunately, who obscure their plates. It's kind of a national trend. There was a really interesting CBS morning thing that my husband and I watched about how there's a higher percentage of folks who are in law enforcement who obscure their plates in certain states. And that's to avoid some of the traffic cameras, and the auto ticketing and parking enforcement, because it's very hard to capture those things when the license plate is obscured. So I'd love to hear a little bit about who is getting in trouble for obscuring their plate now, and are we monitoring that? And I don't know where that would come from, if it's DMV enforcement, but if it's not an issue in Vermont, the way it was articulated in the news broadcast in states like New York and Massachusetts, that would be comforting to me, to at least feel good about a proposal to limit our number of license plates, so number of visible ways that you could catch someone. And then that brings me to questions about speed cameras and work zones, and what happens if you don't catch someone on the front plate or the back plate. You have two chances there versus one. And I'm just wondering if the effectiveness of those cameras decreases, and what the likelihood of having flagger related injuries would be. That's my thought on that. And I just want to express those.
I know we're gonna come back to this.
Yep.
So I have a lot of thoughts on it. And
Yep.
I just want to let you know, I want to make sure.
We're definitely
Yeah,
gonna
Okay.
come back to this, and I'd like to get through the last two issues here, and then, but we're definitely coming back.
All right. So the next change is a single dimensional change in the definition of all-terrain vehicle. You'll find the dimension change. So ATV is defined as a non-highway recreational vehicle, excluding snowmobiles, having not less than 2 low-pressure tires, not wider. Current law is 64 inches. This would say not wider than 72 inches. So going from 5'4" to 6 foot in width, with 2-wheel ATVs having permanent full-time power to both wheels and having a dry weight of less than 2,500 pounds. And then it goes on from there. So the big dimensional change here is from 5'4" to 6 feet wide. And that's the only change. That's on line 1 of page 49. So the next would be creating a study committee, section 40. This is on the bottom of page 49. Within the DMV to examine the assessment of purchase and use tax on used motor vehicles and the inspection of motor vehicles whose onboard diagnostic malfunction indicator light is on. The committee would be chaired by the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles or the Commissioner's designee. It would have 2 current members of the House from different parties, 2 current members of the Senate from different parties, a member of the Vehicle and Automotive Distributors Association, the Dealers Association, a member from the Insurance Agent Association, and a member from Vermont Community Action Partnership. Those were 3 groups I added to try to represent folks selling vehicles, folks insuring vehicles, and folks who are working with lower income Vermonters. Obviously, that membership to change. Their duties are to look at the potential fiscal impact to the state of assessing the actual purchase, the purchase and use tax on the actual amount that the vehicle was purchased for rather than the clean trade-in value, the potential for assessing the tax against the amount the used vehicle was purchased for if the difference between the purchase price and the clean trade-in value is equal to or less than the cost of repairs necessary for the vehicle to pass inspection, and potential modifications to the periodic inspection manual to permit vehicles whose onboard diagnostic light is illuminated to pass inspection if the cause of the onboard diagnostic light being on does not actually affect the safety of the vehicle with respect to the operator, the passengers, or other vehicles. Assistance for the committee would be provided by the DMV. The report would be due January 15th to this committee and your House counterparts. And they would have their first meeting on or before September 1st. And they would cease to exist on January 30th. There's provision for compensation for legislative members from the General Assembly's monies and for any other members who are not otherwise compensated. would get per diem compensation and reimbursement of expenses from the DMV's funds. So that is a sort of general study committee. You may want to adjust the items if you move forward with it, the items studied and the membership. Certainly number of meetings, where the money comes from, et cetera, are all other things that you may want to discuss. I went with just default language to start. And that,
And
Yeah.
I will just, I asked him to draft this to at least vet the issue. I know that not everybody agrees around the table around this, but I think there is an issue here. And the question is, how would we move it? How would we at least vet the issue in a way that is thoughtful? So, and this is the first time I've seen the language from being too. So, and we certainly are coming back to that.
So it's just being included in the draft. We're not gonna vote on.
Well, we're not, we're trying to work through the issues in the draft. We're coming back to, the pieces in this. And I think we've got quite a few tinted windows. We've got, front plates. We've got, whether or not this language, we've got
Yeah.
your issue that, you raised.
Yeah.
That I think we'll wanna, and it would be helpful if you worked with Damien to get some language that we could look at.
Yes, so I did send that in an email last week, and I also
To
have,
Damien?
yes,
Okay.
he drafted, yeah,
He-
so I guess.
He
So I
would
guess
need, I would encourage you to, put this in the next draft.
Great,
the license language.
exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we can take a look at it as a committee and have everything in a draft that we need to do that. And we'll look for DMV to comment and whoever else we think we'll need to.
Okay.
Okay? If we could take 5 minutes and then be back here. And I'm sorry, we're starting earlier and we'll probably the rest of this week want to start earlier.